Yeah, by February 25th, I believe it is. So.
Back then we had to be clipped if they were all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, back then they were.
This was
really
bad though, this was like government shutdown, the whole thing. This was huge, huge, huge.
6 pages.
Did they fix the bus situation? Weren't you?
The funding of the bus. Yeah, so I mean, more or less what it is, they
People say the same thing.
for a bus in 23 to purchase in 24. And they started funding it in 25, kind of deal. So the bus that we just paid for was the 22.
And then more you stand up.
To be bought in 23, but we paid for it in 23. So they had that date fixed, so yes.
But they did do that.
They did, so just, yeah, they have to find out from somebody what I'm supposed to do because it lowers the 25.
And that's the thing, we're not gonna get
270.
anybody on that side.
But it's
They're either gonna do it
there
or
are other funding, so it's not
sometimes you can
really something, you know what I mean?
be talking too much about it.
Yeah, so essentially, back to subcommittee monthly file, except I had my own job.
Yeah.
Because I had last year's budget for that month, that I was quarterly. Submit the final budget.
Yeah. We'll have to talk more, so I'm, you know, so they actually clear what we're saying.
They all sat at the table last time, I played. I kind of know that. I don't know if you want to like split the tables and face each other versus have everybody back too.
Yeah.
You
I already-
first grade.
Do you want to put the table this
Found
way
out
and
every
then
day.
everybody face each other? and-
So how old do you think I?
That's fine, so.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. Hey, you might have one of those shirts. Sweatshirts.
Cheer, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I love to change my dog.
My daughter had me first grade.
I remember, I just ran her the
That's what she told me today, her and the kids are down there.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me, Stephanie?
You can.
Okay.
I'll just have to do a roll call. And the pledge allegiance, okay?
Am I sharing my screen?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
It's the first year from like, I'm an architect. All right, I'll call the order. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call. Chris McLaughlin. Haley. Here. Jesse.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
Deb Wallace. All right, Eileen, we will kick it off to you.
All right, everyone has the handouts?
Yes.
Okay. So, the handouts that I sent out, are much more comprehensive than we have to cover tonight. Tonight, I'm simply covering the part of the procedures and policies that need to be covered for the confidentiality, the required confidentiality is part of your policy AC and your policy GCFB that your district has adopted. These policies require a training in confidentiality and a training reviewing the hiring requirements and guidelines for the hiring of your interim superintendent of schools. We do have 3 applications, completed applications in our office that have arrived. So because the ad said until a suitable candidate is found, after this training tonight, those that are participating and those who agree to sign the confidentiality agreement then can move forward and can go ahead and conduct the interviews. Once again, let me remind you that will happen is that when you are ready to receive the applications, I will confirm that you have signed the confidentiality agreement that I go over tonight. Then I will send you the applications in a secure web page where you can review the applications. I will also send you sample interview questions, which you can do what you want. You can pitch them, you can say we'll use some of them, you can rewrite some of them, and you can add some of them. But I will support you in writing some of the questions that are more tailored towards an interim superintendent position. I believe you have a 4th application coming in, but I haven't seen it yet. I do know it's been requested. So that's the good news is that you do have at least 3 completed applications in our office. So when you're ready to move forward, we do have this training behind you and you can do so in a timely manner. So on the first page, you've got your main hiring requirements and guidelines. You've got the 3 federal and state employment laws that are really referenced in your policies. You have the Title VI Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin. You have Title IX of the Education Amendments, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. You have the 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And then you have Title II of the Americans with Disability Act that prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. These are federal laws that we're required to follow, and they are part of your policies. So this all dovetails with your policies. The 3 main laws, the improper selection process and your interview process is not the Chapter 889 to promote equity of women for women in administrative positions. This was approved in 1980, and basically this chapter requires job description review, criteria, a non-discriminatory hiring procedure, and affirmative action plans. This was implemented in 1980. It does align with the rest of your policies. And I have put links to all of these, so if you want to dig in further. In this case, I'm the messenger, and I'm just right now bringing forward the requirements for an equitable hiring process based on your policies that you have adopted. So there's no opinion in this. It's just pretty much this is your policy, and therefore this is what you need to do moving forward. You also have Title 28, the Personal Records Law, and this basically requires all the information to be kept confidential relating to the applicants for employment, and confidential means forever. So even next fall, when you start your full search, or whenever you choose to do that, and maybe one of these applicants decides to apply for the full-time position, maybe some of these applicants for the interim position, you can't even say, well, they were one of our applicants last time. You've got to remain confidential in this process forever. It's important for the applicants and the candidates that they trust there is going to be confidentiality throughout the process. There may be people that are saying, I'm kind of interested, I think the match, I'm gonna, throw my line into the pond and see what happens, and but they haven't told their board, they haven't told their board chair in another district, because they don't want that other district to think they're unhappy. They're doing their research. They need to have the right and the flexibility to do that research and to look into the position in your school department without feeling as though it's gonna be talked about and it might get back to the place where they don't want it to be back to. When I left the superintendency in the Booth Bay region to go into the executive director of the Maine Superintendent Association, I trusted that process would be confidential. I trusted I could research, I trusted I could do my homework, I trusted that I could go through the interview process. And if I felt it was a match and I was offered the job, I could accept it. But I also knew it wasn't gonna end up back home, because I wasn't unhappy. I was very happy, but I didn't want my board to think I was actively looking. So please, the needs for confidentiality for the candidates that are looking at your district. The last main law that impacts the selection process is Title I. Basically, this requires school boards to meet in public when considering the process. So when are you going to meet? Even how many candidates are you going to interview? However, you will meet in executive session when deliberating on confidential matters. So when the board interviews the candidates for interim superintendent, you will probably have a quorum. That will mean you will go into executive session, and then you will conduct your interviews because you'll have that quorum. And then you'll come out, and when you're ready to make that decision, that will be done in public session. So just remember that you do have the freedom of access laws to consider. So you've got your federal law, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, Title IX of the Education Amendments, Section 504, Title II of the American Disabilities Act. You've got Chapter 889. You've got Title 28 of Personal Records Law and Title I, Section 401, which is your freedom of access law. These laws are all tied into the policies, but you're all required to follow them. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to highlight a couple of things in the next couple of pages. Maine's Department of Education has a methods of administrative guidance, and what this does, it requires districts to publish a notice of non-discrimination on a continuing basis in a variety of different locations. This could be your handbook, this could be on all your job applications, anything for employment, anything for admission. It can be in your posting notices and recruitment materials. You're required to post basically that it's intended to be a statement found on all official school communication and publications to express the school's commitment to equitable access to education and employment opportunity based on the federal and state laws that we just talked about. The minimum requirements is that non-discrimination will include race, color, national origin, sex or discrimination in its educational programs and its employment practices. It also includes sexual orientation as defined in Chapter 5 of the Human Rights Act, and it also includes religion and ancestry. So basically, schools are required by this Maine's continuous notice of non-discrimination to post the statement that you will adhere to not to discriminate on the basis of the protected classes and what's listed in Title V of the Human Rights Act in your hiring procedures and processes for any employment. Basically, it also says that schools may not engage in any employment practice that discriminates against the protected classes, and also the additions from the Human Rights Act, and that you must include the non-discrimination policy within all informational documents associated with recruitment and redeployment, including your ads and applications, contracts, and handbooks. So when we put your ad out for the interim superintendent, it did include a statement of non-discrimination that came from your policy. And it basically says that the Hermon School Department will not discriminate in equal opportunity employment providers. Well, this is that Maine's continuous notice of non-discrimination. So on page 4, I'm jumping over to, and please raise your hand for my questions, but on page 4, I'm flipping over to your policy AC. This is your non-discrimination equal opportunity policy that you're required to follow. It is your policy. If you go down to the bottom of the page, you'll see the legal references and you'll see the references that I mentioned in our state and federal laws that I mentioned at the very beginning. But the summary is that, and this, we did take this first sentence to put in your application, is that the Hermon School Department does not discriminate on the basis of sex or other protected categories in its educational programs and activities as required by federal and state regulations, in discrimination and harassment of school employees based on protected classes, and genetic information are prohibited, and discrimination against and harassment of students against in protected classes also are discriminated. And also, so this is your policy, that your equal opportunity and affirmative action policy. This was adopted, you folks, it was amended in November 2 of 20, so this is the most up-to-date version of this policy. Yep.
Eileen, I wanted to ask, when it references the affirmative action officer, is that yourself?
No, you have one in your district. Every district's required to have one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
And so I'm not gonna go into those sections because those will pertain to the hiring of your interim superintendent. The rest of the policy does talk about implementing a continuing program designed to prevent discrimination. So there should be a program against all applicants, employees, students, and other individuals. And the other thing, the school unit has a designated and authorized affirmative action officer, Title IX coordinator. So there should be that in your district, that any complaints for Title IX or affirmative action would be going to that officer.
okay, yeah.
So the things that I'm gonna highlight, so that I'm not here for 2 hours, are strictly focused on the hiring of your interim superintendent.
Can I just ask you one question though? Because the job posting referenced the full year and the committee had approved up to 1 year, so do we just communicate that when we're in the interviews?
I believe the ad said up to 1 year.
Okay.
And I'll make sure when I contact the candidates, I'll make sure it says up to 1 year. But
Okay.
I'm 99% sure we changed it up to 1 year.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
Yeah. So moving on to page 6 is the next policy that I'm gonna highlight as it pertains to the hiring of your interim superintendent. Your policy GCFB. This was reviewed July 11th, 22. So once again, this is a very updated policy. However, it hasn't changed since you first adopted it in 2010. Once again, in response to the Act to Promote Equity of Opportunity for Women in Administration, which was Public Law 1990, Chapter 889, you affirm your commitment to the strict prohibition of discrimination in employment of the protected classes. So that's your policy. So this requires you to make sure that you're not discriminating against any of your candidates. And then moving on to page 7, which is your GCFBR, which is really your procedure policy. Once again, the opening statement says that the procedures that you have are designed to establish a thorough practice for the recruitment and hiring of the most qualified candidates for the administrative position. So it requires a job description development review. So we did go over your job description. We did include that in the ad that went out. We are recruiting right now. We did send out an ad in Serving Schools, School Spring. It is posted on the MSMA website, and it went out to all superintendents, assistant superintendents, and CTE coordinators, which would be your typical group of people that would be looking at this. We also sent that out to our interim list of retired superintendents that may be interested in looking at this, and I did pick up the phone and called some recently retired superintendents who have expressed an interest to me in serving as an interim. So I picked up the phone and I said, just so you know, we just posted this position. That's what we do for recruiting interim superintendents. Screening will happen when you get the applications. You'll sit down, you'll take a look at them. I can provide a screening rubric for you to help guide that The applications are not the huge comprehensive applications for a full-time superintendent. They're a little bit, shortened. So your screening will be basically reviewing the applications, looking at their resumes, reading their letters of reference, their letters of recommendation, reading their opening letter of why they're interested, and then you'll begin to discuss which candidates you want to bring in for an interview. Once again, interviewing, I will send you a list of sample questions that you may want to ask your interim superintendent for you to determine which questions you may want to use. I certainly would recommend that you include questions that are really pertinent to the Hermon School Department. I don't pretend to know that information. I don't pretend to provide you with that information. That needs to come from you. You'll obviously get to the point where you're going to select the candidate, and then you'll negotiate the contract with the candidate, and then determine their starting date. So that is what the interim process is a very reduced process from the full search. So the full search will be much more comprehensive as you move forward. On page 10, though, I really want to stop and talk about confidentiality. To ensure the confidentiality is maintained and permanently followed throughout the hiring process, all the participants look to maintain absolute confidentiality about the candidates, including their names, in accordance with state law. So this is not just we're asking you to do it, we are asking you to follow the law and maintain confidentiality throughout the process. It means you don't talk to your neighbors about it, you don't pick up the phone and conduct a reference check, you don't pick up the phone and talk to anyone about it. That's my job. Reference check will be done by who you become on the board. I can send you reference check questions, but please make sure that you're not talking to other people about the candidates. Maine is a really small state, and it won't take very long for it to get out that people know who has applied and that type of thing. And I wouldn't want you to end up with a lawsuit. If that's a headache you don't need. So that's why we're doing this training tonight, is to review the importance of confidentiality. The school committee is to assume responsibility for the superintendent or the school board for providing an adequate orientation of appropriate stages of the process on confidentiality. On the next page, on page 12, is your confidentiality agreement. So basically, it appreciates your willingness to assist in the process of screening applicants for the selection of the superintendent of the Hermon School Department. In the next part, I'm going to read, understanding the intent and seriousness of the legal requirement to maintain strict confidentiality is most important in regard to Title 28, Section 6101.2b of the Maine statute reads in part that any information in any form relating to an employee or applicant for employment or to the employee's immediate family shall be kept confidential if it relates to the following: all information, working papers, and examinations used in the evaluation or examination of all applicants for employee. There has been one test case that's been substantiated that even the name of the applicant. So if you were to say to someone in your neighborhood, Eileen King applied for the interim position, that is protected information, even something as simple as a name, or something that associates that person with a job, or the former superintendent of schools in the Booth Bay Harbor CSD. That would then define who that is. That is protected information. So we just ask that in order to avoid any kind of case of any challenge or breaching confidentiality, we ask that you maintain confidentiality. It is permanent. It applies to all unsuccessful candidates as well as the successful candidate. Obviously, that becomes not an open information once they're hired. Therefore, in agreeing to participate in this undertaking, we expect you to acknowledge having been provided with this orientation on the requirement for confidentiality, and that you are accepting the responsibility. If you choose to accept this responsibility and you believe you can maintain confidentiality, then you are required to sign the confidentiality agreement below and sign it and turn it in. We're asking that we have these by, I don't know if we put a date on this, but we're asking, today is Monday, we're asking that we have these in the superintendent's office by Wednesday. Now, there's two ways you can do it. At the very top of page 10, there is a blue link to the Survey Monkey. You can go on there, you can sign it in there, which you put your name, you click the box saying I agree, and then you submit. Or I think Jody was gonna have hard copies tonight to hand out to have you folks sign it there. So we'll need them by Wednesday. I would recommend that, given that we're at the end of April, that you begin to seriously consider a date to interview at least the three, maybe three if you want to interview three. You might look and say we only want to interview two, but the applications, the candidates we already have in place. And then finally, the last part of this is confidentiality in the hiring process. Obviously, any breach in confidentiality result in serious legal ramifications. This is page 12. Do not discuss the candidates with other members of the interview team unless you have come together to do so. So please don't call your fellow board members to talk about this. Conducting your own Google search or seeking information about the candidates is strictly prohibited, and it is a violation of the confidentiality agreement. It is forever, not just during the hiring process. It's for all positions, and it includes members of the candidate's family, in case you have someone that's working in the district. And then as you examine the documents virtually, which you will be given the opportunity to do through the secure web page that we'll give you with a passcode, that should be done private. It should be out of view of your family members. Make sure that they don't have access to the emails and the information that are sent out to you regarding the candidates, and ensure that family members that are using the computer that you're using to review the application materials are not able to access the materials. And please keep all notes that you're taking secure. At the very end of the process, there'll be a collection of the materials, your notes, the interview rubric questions that we'll use during your interview. Those will be collected and they'll be stored according to the requirements to store confidential information. So that's a really abbreviated confidentiality training. Any questions?
Yeah, so Wednesday at the latest for us to have these Wednesday at the latest for these documents to be turned in. At what point, then you'll release them to us the next day?
So what I usually do is, what we need to do is we need to determine the date that you're gonna interview. So that's something you might wanna do tonight and say, okay, when are we gonna interview, what time? So I need to have that idea. What I'll do is I'll release them to you several days before that. So they're not just sitting around for weeks. So if you're gonna interview, I don't know, you're gonna interview, where are we right now? Let's say you're gonna interview next Monday, April 29th. I'll release the documents to you probably Thursday to review, and you'll have them in a secure web page. There are only 3, so it won't take that long to review the documents. But then I need to know who you're gonna interview. So we need to talk about timing and calendar stuff.
Okay. Yeah, because we will need to interview them ideally in the same day.
You do wanna interview whoever you select. You might select the 3, you might select 2, you might select 1. But if you do more than one, you should do all 3 the same day.
Okay.
And you can't have someone show up for one interview, like a board member can't participate in one interview but not the other. They have to be there for all the interviews. So that's why I recommend you do it one day. So if I give you the applications, let's say I give you the applications Wednesday, you let me know Friday how many applications. You're gonna have to talk to each other. That's why this can't be done that quickly. You'll need to let me know who you're gonna interview, and then I'll split up the interviews, and then I'll send you the questions. And I can go ahead and send you the sample questions tomorrow. I think I've got them all done, actually. But I would say you should probably try to interview by May 3rd or May 6th at the latest if you can.
April 29th, what's everyone's thoughts? And what time would those normally start?
Depends on your schedule. So what's the earliest the board can start, and then plan for an hour for each interview with a little break in between.
I would suggest before we conduct the interviews, we have our own separate meeting in which we review our questions and we just discuss on who's gonna ask which question and what those ground rules are of how we're going to conduct the interviews.
Yeah, last time, so the questions all have to be asked of this applicant, all the same questions to be asked.
Yes, yes.
And so you would send those questions out to us, and then if anyone wants to add any, I mean, we'd have to have another meeting, or we can do it by email like we did.
I would
If
suggest
there's
we have
gonna be a
meeting.
quorum, I would recommend that the board get together, go into executive session. Obviously, the interview questions would be done in executive session, so that you don't have, listening to what the questions are gonna be. I would recommend you look at a meeting and screen the applications together. Have your laptop, sit down, go through the applications, determine who you wanna interview, determine when you wanna interview, determine what your questions are gonna be, and then give me a call and I'll schedule everything.
I think last time we did the prep work individually, and then we met afterwards to discuss the candidates and any questions we had in the applications. But we spent time individually doing the screening, because some people take longer than others, and then we get together after we did that.
You did do it that way last time, but we were also looking at a full search. But, so whatever you folks decide, there's a couple different ways to do it. I just need to know when to send you the applications, and then I need to know how many people you're going to interview, and what your times are.
If we're doing meetings on the 30th, could we do an executive session at the end of that evening or before those start? Because we're meeting for subjects, I think subcommittees, and that way we're already here that day. And then we could, as a group, meet and have the questions and the resumes, and then plan for the interviews the following week.
We could interview
Well, like
the
plan.
second or third, even potentially. If we met on the 29th, I don't know, what's your calendar, Jesse? Which day, 29th or 30th?
29th would be better for me.
So if we were gonna meet on the 29th to determine and have an executive session for our interview questions and which candidates we were gonna go forth with, that would still work for you to release them to us Thursday?
Yes, I can get them out to you the 25th. Yes. What I need from Jody is I need all the board members. First of all, they would have to have signed the confidentiality agreement to get the applications. So I'll need to have a list of the board members who have signed the confidentiality agreement, and I'll need their email sent to me, because all this is gonna be done via email. Keep in mind that it will be a secure web page. You will not have printing, you will not be able to print, that will be disabled. So we don't want copies of the applications hanging around, this will all be done electronically.
And then what would be a potential day for us to interview?
Well, so if you're gonna meet on the 29th and make that decision, if they're available, I mean, this is a short turnaround, it could be May 6th. May 6th would give the candidates a week.
That's our regular committee meeting day, but
I don't think a Friday afternoon
No,
is a good time. I think Thursday is too soon. I could try to make it happen the second, but
so if we did the 6th, our meeting's at 6:30, I don't think that's gonna work, yeah. 7th,
May 7th, I can try, yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, because you're not gonna call me until the 30th, that Tuesday, so that's 1 week, that's perfect.
We couldn't do it that Monday before the board meeting in the day.
what time would you suggest? That's what I was trying to figure out, because Monday would be better, because it's considered a committee meeting,
Yeah, and then
so the last.
if you needed executive session, that would be beneficial, just put it all, like if you interview during the day and then you do
What
executive
time would you suggest?
session, I'm available that day, so.
I mean, that Monday would theoretically, if we did,
I mean, we gotta assume that most of these folks are working, so
Well, let's say the
it may be hard for them to get out of their job anytime before 4 o'clock.
So, I would recommend that you start, I don't know, is it possible to start your interviews at 5:30?
no, I was thinking, I wanted to try at 4, or that's
If
not
you
gonna
can
work.
get through,
No, we couldn't get,
Couldn't get there.
yeah.
it's gonna depend on how many we're gonna do.
Yeah.
At least 1 hour per person at the social.
I mean, 3, but 3 to 4:35, that's too close.
I'm available, so I guess it would also have to do with candidates and who else is available. It would be good just,
I would like to do it, I'm with you, I'd like to do it that day, but.
What day?
the
The
6th.
6th, but our regular committee meeting is at 6:30.
What about other board members that are working?
I have the 6th.
Well, it would be us 4 that are here that are private.
Okay, if that works with the 4th, that should be fine. It depends on how many you interview, so you've gotta look at, you're gonna plan on an hour interview. So if you start at 6, you wanna be done by 5:45. So you need to back that up.
Yeah. I don't think that day's gonna work, I mean,
I thought you mentioned May 7th as well.
we did, but I potentially have something then, but
Are you available?
I am, but I don't think it's a good idea to try to achieve
Yeah, I think
all
maybe-
into 1 day.
May 9th potentially.
Trying to run a regular meeting and have your interviews
No,
on
it's
front
too
end of
much.
it, it's just informational blow.
Yeah, I mean, this is up to you. I don't come to the interviews. I don't interview. This is your decision. I facilitate the process. So I just need to know when to send in the applications and when to call the candidates.
Okay, so okay.
The 29th is a conflict for me currently, I don't think I can. No, I'm gonna look at it further. For us to meet to go over the questions, if we have any chance, we could do it for the subcommittees around there. We're all gonna be here anyway, to the best of my knowledge.
If we did the 30th, okay, if we did the 30th, you'd still release them to us on Thursday?
Yep.
Okay. We'll do the 30th.
What time?
What time do you want? 6? We'll do 6 on the 30th. And
Your
then,
interview on the 30th?
no,
Okay,
the 30th will be when we determine who we're gonna interview, and I'll let you know the next day.
okay. We will send out your applications to you on Wednesday. And please make sure that we have signed confidentiality agreements before we do that.
Yes, absolutely, and then I'll confirm for you the day that we're gonna do the interviews too, I'll just,
Sure.
Because you have another
Yeah,
meeting.
I just need to know the day and the time, that you're thinking, keep in mind an hour with a couple minutes in between, so when you decide how many, then we'll schedule it that way.
Sounds good. Thank you, Eileen. Any other
We have
questions for Eileen?
remember I was optimistic and someone went, oh, you're awful optimistic, we have three.
Possibly
I
four.
appreciate it. Possibly 4, so good.
Possibly four, I'm not sure about that. All right, everyone, have a great night, have a
Thank
good
you.
meeting.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
It's kind of tight, but the 3rd, did you say you were available or you were for?
Not for interviewing on a Friday, I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to, but,
She said they all should be done the same day.
so potentially looking at May 9th, or unless we felt like we wanted to do it on the 3rd, but I think that can be.
Okay.
You're available on the 9th, let's aim for May 9th. And then we could potentially do 4. They were late,
Yeah, they were.
last time.
Yeah.
4, 6, 8, if there was 3.
4, did we do last time? We did 4, let's say 4 to 5, 15, yeah.
Oh, so 5:30, 7. 4, 5:30, 7. All right, now we're gonna move on to discussion of qualifications, characteristics, and expectations for the interim. I know that, I asked everyone to send me their ideas, but, we don't have anyone signed up for public comment. Did anyone wish to comment on that? Okay, public comment will be closed. Did anyone have any ideas?
I sent you everything.
Communication is definitely one that several of us agreed on. So I definitely think that making sure questions surrounding that, I'd ask everybody to think about the questions that you want to start to ask, because again, if we ask one candidate a question, we got to ask it all. And what we did last time is the questions will just be numbered. We'll just go right down the list and pick who's going to ask, and that person's going to ask that. Jesse, if he's assigned number 1 and it was just random, we didn't pick who decided because it's right there on the paper. You don't need to vary it. Jesse, you'll just ask question number 1 to everyone. Haley, you'll do the next one, or however, but we all ask same amount of questions. If that makes sense. If you don't want to ask a question, then by all means, just let me know. I know another important thing, of course, is there was one that talked about the students. So of course, that has got to be a priority. Passion for the students. The ones that people thought were important, I'm just gonna read them. Educational backgrounds, so typically successful superintendents hold advanced degrees. That was more like for the full term. But when we look at the interim, I thought it was great, resilience and calm under pressure. So interims may face heightened scrutiny and pressure due to the temporary nature of their role and the circumstances surrounding their appointment. So resilience and the ability to remain calm under pressure are essential qualities. So I love that one. Knowledge of district operations. So while the interims may not have the same level of institutional knowledge as permanent superintendents, they should have a solid understanding of district operations and be able to quickly familiarize themselves with key issues and challenges. Neutral and impartial leadership. They must navigate the complexities of the district's policies and relationships while remaining impartial and focused on the best interests of the students in the district. I mean, that is so important. Stability and continuity, that they often step into roles during times of transition or crisis, so they must provide stability for the district while also preparing for the transition to a permanent, if applicable, and effective communication. Did anyone have anything else? I mean, these were ones that we got from the main school management. I know everybody has a copy of them, so as you're thinking about questions that are different from what Eileen has, just keep these in mind. Anything else that anyone had that they wanted to add?
I think Eileen was gonna send, I'm guessing you and Jody, a list of interim questions.
Yeah, I think she's gonna send them all to us tomorrow.
I'll dig up what we used last time too, and send them to you, just so we have a reference of more questions in case we don't ask additional ones.
So the plan will be Thursday at the latest, we'll get the documents from Eileen, we'll review them, we will meet, what day did we say? Tuesday, the 30th at 6 o'clock.
For executive session.
That will have to be posted as a special meeting, Jody, please. With an agenda of an executive session. And then we will meet for executive session, decide who we're gonna interview. The next day, I'll let Eileen know the date, confirm with her the day that it's May 9th, the times, and then she'll get back to us.
And we'll go over the questions that we'll ask, if anything.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody will know which question they're assigned to, so as you get the questions, if there's one you're passionate about, sure. But just again, make sure that you're reading it from the form, we cannot alter. And if that first candidate gets asked a question, we gotta ask it of all. And then we can't ask the second or third candidate a question that we didn't ask the first, so we gotta make sure that we got those questions solved.
I gotta stress that meeting, it's on the 30th at 6. I think of it almost as a mini rehearsal for us.
Yeah, sure.
That this is the time that the preparation for an interview, the more we are prepared for a good interview, the better the interview will run and the better candidate we'll get. And it's not only a review of the questions, but it's also a review of she mentioned the rubric, but what we expect as an interview committee, of what we expect as positive answers and negative answers, so that we all agree on when we have that question, what we are looking for as a general. I realize we won't all agree on the exact answer, but what we are looking for general considerations when we ask a specific question. And just whenever I've been involved in these, the more prepared and short of the term rehearsed we are on, from how we're setting up the interview process, to how the tables will be set up, to who's asking what question, to what the expected outcome is. The better we are prepared for that, the better the entire interview process will go.
Do you typically have these superintendent's office ready to do that?
It's funny you say that. I was just thinking of that. So normally the whole committee is not part of the hiring committee, but I wanted everybody to have the option to do it. And I do think that the superintendent's office, Jody, if it was available, would be a good option for us to do that.
We could do that. The only other thing I'll throw out there, we did it at Morgan Hill one year, and we did it there because we wanted to keep who was applying confidential.
That's true.
Well,
So
the
if
only-
they see people going in the superintendent's office, they're gonna know that or assume that they're applying.
It's tricky.
I know. That's the only thing about having the whole committee be part of it.
I don't know what that has to do. What do you mean by that? I'm confused.
Because it's a forum, so we have to, it's a meeting that
Oh,
we have to
through public.
post, we have to have public comment, all that. So normally, if it's not a meeting, people might not necessarily know what they were interviewing, right? We have to keep the candidates confidential, so I think
You don't
we probably
count
have it
towards
here.
quorum, right? Is that because you're the chair, so you wouldn't count towards quorum? How does
No, it's a quorum, so we have to publish this meeting as a special meeting.
No, we're talking about the interviews, not.
Anytime there's 3 of us present.
I think we can still do that. I'm not saying that we have to do
No,
it.
I think we
at
do
Morgan
it
Hill.
here, because there's more going on here.
I mean, just because we go into executive session doesn't mean we can't move to a different location.
I thought about that.
Yeah.
So we can open the meeting, have public comment, move to executive session, and we could start the meeting at 8 in the morning. There's no time limit there. And I'm saying
That's a good
8
idea.
as an example, but we can get together, 3 of us can get together and open the school committee meeting, allow for public comment, and then move into executive session, and we have a time in which we're going to meet to do the private interviews, and then we all come back together for the.
I like that.
We could, we could have the applicants also come through a door that's not the main entrance.
I've
Yeah,
just
we've
not,
done that before too.
it's not really conducting public business when you're doing an interview though, you're not,
There's 3 people present.
have you run that through the attorney?
Absolutely.
She mentioned it too. She did mention it on the
I think
education.
there's reasonable ways around it.
Yeah, nope. So we will have, the public can meet here and then.
We
two-
can-
You could always,
Yeah.
could technically do it over Zoom, so that person isn't coming, I know it's awkward, but.
We can determine that, because we have to be in public, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be
I think that
determined
can
on
be
where we do it, but we'll meet here. Okay. Any other questions that anyone has?
I think I sent this to you in email, and I said down the road, but she actually linked it. The current position description, I think we do need to take a look at that sooner than later, because there are certain things stated in there that need to be updated. I don't see, there isn't a problem with the current description, but there's things in there that do need to be updated, that references a vision and a strategic plan, and we don't have a current vision and strategic plan. There's some other things in there that just need to be tightened up. So if we're gonna have that as a link on the job vacancies, then we need to make sure that the link is to a good one. And I printed off a copy of the vacancy that's posted, and it does have it listed as superintendent for the year, for the 2024-2025 school year, which, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
So I just think that needs to be addressed when we do the interviews, what the actual timeframe is.
Yeah, she can even too when she sets them up, yes. Yes. Anything else?
Policy review. Do we need to look at policy GSFDR in accordance with GCFB? It might not be needed for the interim selection, but GCFB states that we will review the policies prior to the hiring of the superintendent.
I agree with you, they should all be one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that could be put on the
With the
policy
job
agenda,
description, yeah.
the agenda for the policy committee, so that they can take a quick look at that, make sure that it's all up to date, and then we can go look at it.
I don't know if it will be on for next week, but absolutely, yeah.
I think what she said was it was up to date based on, it met the criteria for the statutes.
It met the criteria, yes, but the policy also states that we need to review it prior to doing the interviews, so just to be able to do that. And then another thing that I don't think really needs to be discussed, but something that I think we should just, give each other the nod that we've reviewed it, and that's policy ACAB-R, which is if you have a complaint over any of the civil rights requirements, those sort of the complaint procedure, so that we're at least familiar with it. I don't think it needs to be discussed in a meeting, because there's really nothing there to discuss, but I think as a committee, we at least need to be familiar with that in case something of that nature should crop up.
I agree with you, updating them all at
Yeah.
once is good.
In a former life, I used to work HR, so I know these things can really come up and bite us, so. And then, if we could get a copy of the affirmative action plan. I see the policy, do we have a plan? It mentions a plan. If we don't have a plan.
That's for the permanent one, right?
Yep.
Perfect. Anything else? Open it up to the public one more time.
Just a couple things, I've done this twice. We made a mistake on the first one. We had one of our interviewers come in and run into the other person going out. So we always made an hour and a half to make sure that somebody had a half hour to clear before the other person would come in and out. Some of your people may not care but the other person might feel uncomfortable if they run into them. Another thing is I got a meeting place if you guys need one in secret, so.
Yeah.
Let me know. I can schedule for you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Anything else? All right, we will adjourn at 6:20.
You want the signed documents?
You want
Oh,
us to
yeah,
leave them in the
we have
file?
Yeah, you can do that and I'll scan them for tomorrow and send those to you. Who signs mine? I can sign it just as a witness, if you want me to do that.
Thanks, Beth, good job. Good job.
Okay, it's not.